Hello, wine friends. Welcome to the Wine Educate podcast, where we explore WSET education, study tips, and practical advice for wine enthusiasts and professionals. This is episode 22. I am your host, Joanne Close, and I will have recorded this episode in advance because I will be in France with my group doing the boot camp this week. It'll be the Thursday, and we'll do our practice exam. So we'll sit down and do the whole 2-hour theory exam. It's really good to do this before you actually do it for real during the exam time, because time management is a huge consideration. One of the main things I see students do, unfortunately, is run out of time and leave whole essays blank. So we will practice this, and then on Friday, we'll go over it. But we will be having a nice lunch at La Cronquette in Grisson after the exam. So again, if you want to see what we're up to, I'll post things on Instagram at Wine Educate. But today, in episode 22, we're going to be tasting a full-bodied red wine using the SAT levels 1 through 3. So we've just spent the last couple weeks going over the structural components of wine. If this is your first podcast, hello, welcome, but you're going to need to go back, okay? You're going to need to listen to episodes 15 through 21 to get caught up to speed so you can get the most out of this tasting that we're going to do. So the wine I chose is a wine we have in the shop. I use this a lot. It is a very testable wine and is going to be really good examples of things like high alcohol, high tannin that we have covered in the structural components. So this specific vintage is the 2020 Apeltagua and Vero Gran Reserva Carmenere from the Colchagua Valley in Chile. Whew, that is a mouthful. Anyway, we keep this wine in the shop. It should be pretty available to you guys wherever you are. I would not say that the vintage is terribly important. I've used this wine for the last 5 years in class, gone through quite a few vintages. It's pretty consistent. And if you can't get your hands on it, if you do happen to find another Chilean Carmenere, I think it might work pretty well too. Okay? We introduce Carmenere in level 2. So this is relevant for the WSET curriculum. And we also obviously carry it over into 11.3. So let's talk a little bit about Carmenere and what it's like. So this is one of these grape hero stories, kind of like Malbec. So Carmenere used to be pretty widely planted in Bordeaux, but over the years fell out of favor. Its yields are smaller. It's susceptible to some of the problems, the diseases that happen in that area. And it just wasn't doing so well. I mean, as we know, the major grapes in Bordeaux, Merlot, Cabernet Sauvignon, were just favored more, planted more, and used as the lion's share of the blend. Some of these grapes, like Malbec and Carmenere, to new places around the world. And then, thankfully, these grapes finally found their true home, right? The place where they were meant to be, and they thrived. So Carmenere is the major grape varietal of Chile. It thrives here. It needs all that lovely sunshine and makes some really remarkable wines. Also, for many years, strangely enough, it was mistaken for Merlot. When they did the DNA testing of grapes, it was actually Carmenere. So what is Carmenere like? It makes wines that are particularly high in tannin, in acidity. The wines tend to be full-bodied. They have a very distinct aroma and flavor to them, which is this kind of green bell pepper, a lot of black fruit and spice, namely due to oak. Because of all those tannins, right? We're going to put the Carmenere in some oak barrels and soften them up. So as we go through, we'll build upon our tasting note. And we always start with level 1. I like to show you guys how the SAT progresses. I also think This is helpful for my comparative learners. I am a comparative learner. You put two things side by side, I can see how they're different, and it helps me remember them both by doing that. So this is another reason I go through all three. So level 1, we look at the wine. It is a red wine. On the nose, we may notice the fruit, in particular black fruit, certainly some oak characteristics showing up, and something herbaceous. There's something green, grassy happening in this wine. On the palate, it's dry, has high acidity, high tannins, high alcohol, full-bodied. Ooh, it is a whopper. When we get to a level 2 SAT tasting note, we're honing in, being more specific, and the appearance of the wine is a medium ruby. Now, if you don't have the exact wine I'm talking about, it very well may be the case that your wine is deep. Okay, these wines that can be quite deeply colored, so that could be an option. For my wine, I said medium ruby. On the nose, it is pronounced. You could smell this wine coming before you get it anywhere close to your nose, jumping out at the glass. Great example of pronounced. Pronounced what? Okay, so we mentioned herbaceous. Let's narrow it down to green bell pepper, eucalyptus. We mentioned black fruit. How about blackberry, black plum, black currant? And then the oak, smoke, cedar, coffee, chocolate. On the palate, it is dry with high acidity, high tannins, high alcohol, full-bodied, and a pronounced flavor of the things I mentioned on the nose, and a long finish. So we just finished talking about finish, the length. I just keep tasting it. I just keep tasting all those oak aromas, all the black fruit, and certainly that herbaceous note. For level 3, again, we're saying it's medium ruby with pronounced aroma intensity of green bell pepper, eucalyptus, blackberry, black plum, black currant, smoke, cedar, coffee, and cocoa. I've also added a few other things that I was getting. Petrol, sort of this rubbery note. This rubbery note, it shows up. It's always fun when it shows up in class because everyone has a different descriptor for it. So rubber gloves, a tennis ball can, a bicycle tire, so on and so forth. I'm sure you have your own rubbery description as well. I also got a little bit of red fruit, so maybe some red currant and red apple skin. So on the nose, we noted primary and some secondary characteristics, but no tertiary. I did mention petrol, but I meant it as a primary. So for development on the nose, youthful. On the palate, dry with high acidity. I put high tannins for the level 2 note. I'm going to hedge on this one. So if you wrote medium plus or high, I would count either of those. Full body, pronounced flavor intensity of the things we mentioned on the nose, high alcohol. And again, for finish, I would accept medium plus or long finish, because remember, medium plus counts as a long finish on Blick as well. So that won't mess you up, okay? And then we do our Blick analysis. It's balanced. It does have length. It does have intensity and identifiable characteristics. It's not yet complex. Not complex. So that's 3 out of 4, makes it very good. Readiness for drinking. Okay, very good. Well, it has a lot of components that would merit it aging and possibly improving in the bottle. So I'm going to say can drink now, but has potential for aging. This is a great wine. It is so definitive. Often in class, we taste a lot of wines in class, and not every wine is this perfect testable wine. I do know that. I use the wines to illustrate different points, learning lessons. So sometimes I use a wine that I would not use as a testable wine on an actual exam. But again, only about 20% of all wines are really, truly very testable that I would feel comfortable giving you on your tasting exam. This is one of them. It is so reliable and so distinct in its aromas and flavors and structural components that I like to use it. It's a good one. All right, keep practicing your tasting. I know that it can be frustrating, and I see I see all your faces, right? I'm at the front of the class. I see your faces. I sense your frustration, but you have to trust the process. You need to trust yourself and your tasting note, okay? And just like anything, this is a practice. You'll pass the tasting. You just have to practice more and have faith in your palate. And I see you frustrated, and that is probably the number one reason I have created this podcast. So in class, I only get limited time with you. It's really not fair. It's a whole lot of material to cover. 30 hours of classroom time when it comes to level 3 is definitely not enough to cover all the material, right? It's a lot of self-study. That's why your study group is so important. That's why I do these tasting workshops. I will get you there, okay? But now, if you have a problem or say you missed the class, now I have these episodes I can pass on to you and say, well, listen to these. This is going to help. All right. I do hope this is helpful. And I look forward to talking to you guys again on Tuesday. Have a lovely weekend.